Hello, my friends. How are you? Welcome to 30 Albums for 30 Years, 1964 through 1994. I am your host, Jay Sweets. Nice to have you with us. Just a few notes about the show. By the time you hear this episode, there will have been 1,000 listens to the program. In over 29 countries, we just added listeners in New Zealand. So welcome to our New Zealand listeners. So hopefully by the time you hear this, there'll be 30 countries, people in 30 countries listening to the program. But today, we will be discussing the album, The Rolling Stones Now, released on London Records, recorded January 3rd through the 8th of 1964, and released February 13th of 1965. So let's get into it. All right, so since I've already talked about the Rolling Stones at length in season number 1, we're going to pick it up right where the album starts. So this is the Rolling Stones Now. It's the band's third U.S. release, and it mainly consisted of tracks previously issued in the UK. The album was a hit, and it reached number 5 on the U.S. Billboard Charts, and Rolling Stone magazine, which is not affiliated with the group, gave the album its highest rating, calling it the group's first consistently great LP. The magazine has ranked it at number 180 on their top 500 greatest albums of all time list. In 1965, the Stones were working hard to catch up with the Beatles and releasing lots of material. Now, meanwhile, the Beatles had started to shift into a period in which they began to self-edit more carefully, adding to more limited releases than the years before. Comparison between the groups will always conjure up debate. During this time, the Stones' appeal was that their music sounded less polished and had more grit than the Beatles. While Mick Jagger and Keith Richards have always been the group's most recognizable and celebrated members, I think not enough is made between the hookup between drummer Charlie Watts and bassist Bill Wyman. They developed a specific groove that was laid back and somewhat behind the beat. That connection is displayed throughout this record. Also, attention should be paid to the way that guitarist Keith Richards and Brian Jones and the occasional inclusion of ousted pianist Ian Stewart work within that rhythmic foundation. The feel of the rhythm section gave the Stones a certain uniqueness and a group sound that kept the Rolling Stones rolling for decades. All right, let's do this thing. Let's drop the needle on side number 1, track number 1. And the tune is Everybody Needs Someone to Love. The track initially appeared on the UK release, The Rolling Stones number 2. The song was written by Solomon Burke, Bert Burns, and Jerry Wexler in 1964, although there is some debate over that. It was originally recorded by Burke, and his version peaked at number 58, and although it was not a top 40 release, it was a soul classic. Now, Burke felt slighted by the royalties or lack thereof that he receives from the song and from Jerry Wexler, and that's the debate. How much did Wexler actually contribute? Then Wilson Pickett recorded the song in 1967. It's the most popular version. His attempt peaked at number 29. Other groups that recorded the piece include the Small Faces, Dusty Springfield, the 13th Floor Elevators, and the Blues Brothers. Early on, the Stones, like many British invasion bands, were often like glorified cover bands. The Stones did covers pretty well, but in truth, the originals were usually better. As with Burke's version, the Rolling Stones recording is hard driving, but the amateurish background vocals on this one distract from the overall performance. Now let's talk about love for a second. Love often leads to marriage, and the majority of the people who do marry has decreased in recent years. Less people are getting married. The proportion of adults who have never been married or in a civil partnership has risen steadily over recent decades. In 2021, 37.9% of adults, that's 18.4 million people, have never been married or in a civil partnership. So yes, everybody needs somebody to love, but not everybody gets married. Let's check it out. Track number 2 is Down Home Girl, which was written by Jerry Lieber and Artie Butler. The track was also released on the Rolling Stones' number 2 album. Down Home Girl was first recorded by the New Orleans-based Alvin Shine Robinson on Redbird Records in 1964. Redbird was a label founded by Lieber and Mike Stoller, the great songwriting team, after they had a long and successful run at Atlantic Records. Later in 1965, a group called the Astronauts, a Colorado-based surf band, recorded it. The Coasters and Taj Mahal have also recorded Down Home Girl. I love the opening lyrics. They are as such. Lord, I swear the perfume you wear was made out of turnip greens, and every time I kiss you, girl, it tastes like pork and beans. Not sure that I could be with a woman who tastes like pork and beans. The Stones capture the tune's essence and prove once again why they are considered one of the best early interpreters of American electric blues and soul. Down Home Girl. The next track is You Can't Catch Me, written by one of the Stones' biggest influences, Chuck Berry. The song's lyrics talk about driving quickly down the New Jersey Turnpike. It's something I often do. Once got my car to, I think, 110 on the Turnpike. But you can't catch me because you didn't see it. And Berry's version was featured in the 1956 film Rock, Rock, Rock. The song's music publishers were Morris Levy, who sued John Lennon for copyright infringement because of the melodic similarities between You Can't Catch Me and the Beatles' 1969 song Come Together, which was written by John Lennon. Both songs use the same lyric, Here Comes Old Flat Top, and there's some similarities in the melody, and that's what the lawsuit was about. The Stones groove on this one, and take notice of Mick Jagger's overmodulated vocals and that hookup between Charlie Watts and Bill Wyman. They're never flashy, but they always seem to connect. You Can't Catch Me. Heart of Stone is our next track. It's one of 4 tracks written by Keith Richards and Mick Jagger on this record. It's the only U.S. single released from the album, and it was critical to the record's success. Heart of Stone was initially released in December 1964 as a single in America, and it was their second top 20 U.S. hit, reaching number 19. Take listen for the deeper tones of Brian Jones's baritone guitar, which sits tonally between a bass guitar and a traditional guitar. The music borrows from American country and soul. Keith Richards plays a pretty clever guitar solo on Heart of Stone, and the lyrics have a masculine overtone and speak of how the narrator, who comes off as kind of an angry misogynist, can't be made broken or soft. Some of the lyrics are kind of just evil, like these. There's been so many girls that I've known, I've made so many cry, and still I wonder why. Here's another. No matter how I try, I just can't make her cry. If you try acting sad, you'll only make me glad. Check it out. The Rolling Stones' Heart of Stone. This next track is one of my favorites on the record. It's called What a Shame. The song was written by Jagger and Richards and was the B-side to Heart of Stone, the single. The song sounds as if it could have been written by Muddy Waters or some other Chicago blues artist. What a Shame captures the Stones' fascination and skills to reproduce the American blues feel. It would be a shame not to enjoy this great track. What a shame. You may have heard that groove before. Well, that's the groove to our next track called Mona, I Need You Baby, an often covered song by Bo Diddley from 1957. And what I just displayed was that Bo Diddley beat that has been included in so many hit songs. Now, Mona was initially released on the Rolling Stones UK debut, The Rolling Stones. The tune is repetitive and again centered around that famed Bo Diddley beat. Check it out again. Now, you can hear that groove in many famous songs. Here's just a list of a few. Not Fade Away by Buddy Holly and the Crickets. I Want Candy by the Strange Gloves. Faith, George Michaels. The Magic Bus, The Who. American Girl, Tom Petty. Desire by U2. And Black Horse and Cherry Tree by KT Turnstile. But there's a lot of other examples. Enjoy Mona, I Need You Baby. All right, still with me? I know you are. Let's flip the record, drop the needle on side number 2, track number 1, and the song is Down the Road a Piece. Down the Road a Piece is an old, down-home boogie-woogie tune written by Don Ray and recorded by the Will Bradley Trio in 1940. Take notice of Ian Stewart on the piano, playing in the boogie-woogie style. The highlight of the track is Keith Richards' solo guitar work. There's an excellent video of the band performing the track in 1965, and you can see that on YouTube. Down the Road a Piece. Our next track is Off the Hook, another Jagger and Richards vehicle that serves as a B-side for their UK single Little Red Rooster. It's a shuffle blues, and again, one of my favorite tracks. I guess I like their B-sides. The lyrics discuss how the narrator's girlfriend takes her phone off the hook, which he's kind of pissed about, so in response, he takes his phone off the hook, and no one can talk to anybody. And really, who has a traditional phone anymore? It's another early Stones track that showcases the group's affection and interest in trying to reproduce American blues, which they do very well. Off the Hook. Our next track is Pain in My Heart, a song that was included and was the name of Otis Redding's 1964 debut, Pain in My Heart, an album I covered in season number 1, a great record. New Orleans legend Alan Toussaint wrote the song, and it's a good attempt by the Rolling Stones, but Redding's version is really the gold standard. Now, Pain in Your Heart. Well, according to CDC, about 1 in 20 adults aged 20 and older have coronary disease. That's about 5% of the population. That could be a pain in your heart. And a heart attack generally causes chest pain for more than 15 minutes. And that pain may be mild or severe. Some heart attacks strike suddenly, but many people have warning signs hours or days in advance. So a pain in your heart could be quite serious. Or you could have just had some spicy Mexican food and have heartburn, I don't know. Check out the track, Pain in My Heart. Oh baby, we've got a good thing going. It's one of only 2 tracks that appeared for the first time on Rolling Stones Now, the album we're checking out. The rest were retreads. The song was written by Barbara Lynn Ozen, an American R&B and electric blues guitarist best known for her 1962 hit, You'll Lose a Good Thing. She is one of several impactful early women who rocked out on the electric guitar early on. The 2 most notable are Memphis Minnie and Sister Rosetta Tharpe. If you are unfamiliar with them, you must check them out. But in 1965, the Rolling Stones really did have a good thing going. They released 5 albums between the UK and the US during that year, with 1 going platinum, that's Out of Our Heads, which we will check out, and 2 going gold, the album we're listening to now, the Rolling Stones Now, and December's Children and Everybody's. That's the 3rd album that we will check out during the season. So we're going to get stoned quite a bit. Oh baby, we got a good thing going. Little Red Rooster. Our next track is a blues classic written by Willie Dixon, the great blues bassist. The song was first recorded by Howlin' Wolf in 1961, and the Stones, they loved Howlin' Wolf's music. In 1963, Sam Cooke adapted the piece, giving it a more R&B edge, and the Stones then took a crack at it in 1964. It became a #1 record for the group in the UK and continues to be the only blues song to reach the top of the British charts. The theme reflects an early 20th century folk belief that comes from the American South that a rooster contributes to peace in the barnyard. Little Red Rooster is one of the Rolling Stones' finest blues covers and an early essential track from the band. Surprise, surprise. We've made it to the last track on the original LP, and that's the name of it, Surprise, Surprise. It's the second track that makes its first appearance on the Rolling Stones Now. Written by Jagger and Richards, the song is hard driving and a good example of their early work together as writers. Surprise, Surprise is a great album closer. I think it could have been a single. And overall, the lyrics are about a girlfriend who was telling lies. It's a familiar subject. Now let's just talk about surprises for a second. According to the Journal of Neuroscience, even if you think you don't like surprises, your brain does. Scientists from Emory University and Baylor College of Medicine set out to identify the biological reasons for why some people enjoy the unexpected. They used a machine to squirt either fruit juice or water into the mouths of test subjects, sometimes predictably and sometimes unpredictably, and then they recorded the participants' responses. An MRI recorded changes in the subject's brain activity as the subjects were being surprised, and it showed that the subjects' brains were more active when they were exposed to the unanticipated. So they found that so-called pleasure centers in the brain do not react equally to any pleasurable substance, but instead react more strongly when the pleasures are unexpected. Surprise, surprise. All right, we did it. Made it to the end of the record. Definitely better for it. So lift the needle off the record carefully. Don't scratch it. Put it back in the jacket, be careful. And back on the shelf for another day. In conclusion, while the record includes mostly earlier UK releases, it's still a pretty solid and well put together record, especially for those who favor the Rolling Stones' more bluesy period. Now, as I mentioned, the Rolling Stones Now reached gold status. It peaked at number 5 in the US. That was significant for the Rolling Stones at the time, and it was their best release to date. But there's much more to come with the Rolling Stones, so stay tuned. 2 more Rolling Stones albums to be featured in this season. I want to thank you as always for listening to the program. I hope you enjoyed it. It's a lot of work, I'll be honest, but I do enjoy doing it, so I'm going to keep up with it. And I need your help. We're, very close to that 1,000 listenership mark. Probably by the time you hear this, we'll be there. I think there's only 5 more needed. And we are being heard in 29 different countries, but I'd like to get to that 30. That's a nice number. So hopefully by the time you hear this, we're in 30 different countries. But to learn more about the program, all you have to do is go to 30albumsfor30years.com. I also have a book out, A History of American Music, 1750 through 1950, an origin story. So I hope you join me for our next program and have a wonderful day. Let's keep this music alive.